Nice, huh?
That is nice.
That is nice. Hi, everyone. Welcome in. There's two of us today. Um, for those of you who are new, I'm the messy human. My name is Joseph, and for those of you who have been on the channel, I have been sharing my incredible journey of recovery and rediscovery and healing. And I wanted to do what I call open soul conversations. And the intention was to invite people along the way that I know understand the mess, right? And the sacredness, the beauty, the opportunity, and the reason and tension of why it's there for us. And so I brought one of my dearest friends, Kim Brassor. Hey, Kim.
Hey, hi.
um, Here. And the cool thing, and y'all understand, is that she's seen my mess. And in fact, she's taken a really key role in being a guide of sorts and just an incredible and patient and intentional and just what I called in actually an accompaniment and she understands it. And I want to say, Kim, that the first reference I ever had about Messi was when we were in our work together in 2000, when was that? 2018, 19, in that time period. Lord have mercy.
Yeah, yeah,
And you talked about the messy middle. I'm like,
yeah.
I've never heard that term. So I'm going to have you talk about that in a moment. And then I was in a community where there was a gal who I really held in high esteem. She was just so articulate, and I thought she could do no wrong. And we had this icebreaker, and of course, I was in charge of it. And it was a sentence stem, and the stem was, "If you really knew me," and then they could just say whatever they want, right? And so she says, if you really knew me, you would know that I am a messy human. And that just shocked me. But it hit right here. And I wrote it down right away. And I said, that just resonated because this very almost in my eyes, right, that I held in high esteem, not an idea of perfection, but at least what she was portraying. And she even mentioned that to see that there's mess in there. So, and then tying it in with you, here I am with the channel that says Messy Human at the top. So, Kim Brassor,
Messy. Yes.
what's the messy middle?
Oh my gosh, Joseph,
Mhm,
thank you so much for
mhm.
having me on. And normally I'm on the other side of podcasts. I'm not generally a guest, so we're just going to chit chat like we normally do and edit as you see fit. For me, the messy middle and my life, I've been in recovery, 12-step recovery for 35 probably years, maybe more. But but my life has always been punctuated by leaps of faith and seasons of surrender.
Mm,
Those are the two. And every time I take a big step, whether it's in a marriage, out of a marriage, into a new job, out of a job, across the country, I've done that a couple times. These big, you don't really know what's next, you just know what's now, and what's now is, the cloud is moving, I need to follow it. So we go.
mhm. Yeah.
And every single time, every single time
Mhm.
I get caught mid leap going, oh my God, what happened to the landing zone? It's not where I thought it would be. It doesn't look the way I thought it would look. It's going to cost more. Things happened while on day 4 of this 10-day journey. And that messy middle, I used to, oh, my understanding of God and I fought a lot.
Mhm.
I have a very toddler mentality with the God of my understanding, and I can stomp and scream and tell him exactly what I think, knowing that he's not going
Yeah.
to claim my firstborn child or make me, pay penance. And so it's all good. But that messy
Mm,
middle, I came to understand. One time I had to be in the messy middle for a year or two. It took a long time. I was on deep grief. It took a long time. And in that messy middle, I understood it was God's waiting room. And I hated it, but to distract from it would have lengthened the recovery time. And so the only thing you can do when you are in intensive care is to surrender to the process. And that's what I call the messy middle, is what we most need for our soul healing, and what we do everything we can to keep from feeling.
oh, that right there, and it's just there is this relationship I'm having with recovery
Mhm.
where I think all the previous work I've done before I really identified, how my dependency on things. I never would have. I mean, I went to codependence, and that was the safest thing. Yeah, I'm going to Coda because, of course, my marriage, ended, and it made sense I'd go to Coda. But to have porn, and Porn Addicts Anonymous, and I shared in a previous video about these places that have been solutions for me. They've been, mainstays. They've been, places I've orchestrated and crafted and felt really comfortable in. I, to and to see that I crafted them myself is part of the healing. So, yeah, I really want to, yeah. But before we do that, this is really, really good. I just, for sake of sparking a conversation from your journey, take me back to a time where you said, like, yeah, this is it. I'm, what, yeah, what was the thing that clicked that said, I'm at the end.
Not one more time.
Yep.
I remember I said to my sister, who's passed now, I said to her, when is it going to be enough? When does this bullshit stop? When is it going to be
Yeah.
enough? And she said,
hmm
when you decide it is. Oh, and she wasn't wrong. So in my life, I have left more than one marriage. What is the truth about me is that my fatal flaw is that I always stay longer than I should. That
hmm
I don't leave somebody who's unfaithful until I can prove who, how, when, and how it happened. And that causes me so much more pain and the
Yeah.
people I love than just saying, if I even think you're messing around, I'm gone, because my trust is already broken, and that's enough for me,
Yeah.
right? You learn these things. So every time it was after I had done everything I could do so nobody could blame me, or I couldn't blame myself. I had to do
hmm
everything, all the everythings, before I could finally call it quits. And it was each time. One time it was a restraining order that turned out to be a lifetime restraining order against the father of my children. And it was when I said, he's going to kill me. Not one more time. It changed everything about me, that process. One time it was staying here in this marriage, different marriage. Staying here, I had given up so much of myself in the 10 years of that marriage that I could look around and see that there was a lot of him and very little of me in that environment or in the relationships we were building. And it was, I'm dying on the vine here. Is this the way I want to go out? And I was almost 60. No, it's not. So it's when you get to the place of, I can't do this one more day.
Yeah.
That's what bottom is for an alcoholic. I
Mhm.
don't know how to be sober, but I know that the drink is going to kill me or I'm going to kill myself. That's a bottom.
You mentioned this many times on your podcast when the pain.
And when the pain
It,
of where we are is greater than the fear of where we're going, that's when we move.
okay,
And we
so
don't move until then.
So so that was that for you? Is that
The
right?
pain of where we are, that daily knowing that this is not a fit, this is not my highest calling. I am so disconnected spiritually in this space. I'm dying whether my body stays moving or not. My soul is dying on the vine here. More than what people thought, more than losing my home, more than starting over at 60,
Yeah.
more than an early
Yeah.
retirement and how am I going to support myself? All of the
Yeah.
unknowns of it. When you get to that bottom, whatever that is, it doesn't matter what it costs because you're no longer just interested, you're now committed to your own soul survival.
Oof. What a appropriate description, your soul survival.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
really is what it is, you
And
know.
people don't see that. We see physical frailty in each other. We can see if somebody's, broken an arm or has a severed artery, we know right where to apply the pressure. But with internal old programming, limiting beliefs, addictions, the things that people don't see because we mask and we overachieve and we look so darn good. They don't know if we don't tell them, and we're not telling them because we want to keep looking good.
That's right. The Looking Good Club. There it is.
Yeah.
My goodness. And so, share a little bit about how, this work actually turned into a lifelong, commitment to service to others,
Oh my God. You mean the big book work?
Yes.
Oh my God. I was 27 years old. I was 27 years old. I was a compulsive eater. Here's a little story for you. This is what people don't know. If you know one thing nobody knows, here's what it would be. Had two small children, three small children. They were ages 1 to 5 at home. I was a stay-at-home mom in Las Vegas. And I went in, I was hungry. I went in, cooked lunch for the children, a little 2-year-old, 4-year-old, and a baby. And I cooked tacos for lunch. And tacos came in, I fried shells. I did them from scratch because that's what I
Yeah.
wanted. And they came in packs of 12. And so I fed the children and I fed myself and I was still hungry. And so I went because I was always calorie conscious, also dieting, addicted to dieting. So I went to see how many more I could have in my calorie content. And I started counting all of those. And I had already had 8 tacos. I had had 8 tacos that I didn't even remember eating 8 tacos. And I was not full or satisfied. And my next thought, Joseph, this is so funny. I haven't told this story to very many people outside of the rooms, particularly. My first thought was, oh my God, I should go throw this up now.
Oh, wow.
I am a person who will do anything not to puke. Anything. It is my least favorite thing. And what didn't scare it scared me that I was binge eating and didn't know it. It scared me that I was still hungry. I had no satiety factor, but it really scared me that I really was headed into an eating disorder for real if I went there. That sent me to an Overeaters Anonymous meeting, my first one, where I had to sneak because my Christian background said they weren't Christian enough. And because this was my own personal shame, I didn't want anybody to know. I had to get my mom to babysit my kids and then tell her I was going to do something feasible because I wasn't telling her where I was going. Snuck off to a meeting. And I have a long and varied history, but within about 2 years there, I found out that you could be worse things than fat and crazy. You could be thin and crazy instead.
You
That
still
was way
crazy.
worse. Way, way worse. So of course I just went and got fat again because at least that way I know how to manage it.
Right.
Um, but during that time, I met somebody who was a recovered alcoholic who showed me the big book. So not just the meetings, but the big book. And we worked closely, like you and I are working, to get through the 103 pages. This much of this big of a book is all you
Yeah.
need. And it aligned so perfectly with my spiritual walk and so perfectly with God as I understood them, and so perfectly with understanding that everything that I was trying to manage and control about my habits were symptoms of an underlying spiritual malady. And when we straighten out spiritually, we straighten out mentally and physically, and that happens automatically. That was the promise of the program, and that was the promise that I held on to and the hope that I had. And I came in, and what I learned, will take volumes of my life to get out.
Yeah.
But I
Well,
have been doing 12-step work and taking inventories ever since. So it's been over 30 years. So we're messy middle. Hey, there is nothing I out there haven't heard or wouldn't be capable of.
yeah. And I think I think that's why it was easy for me
Mhm.
to, to be really, truly transparent. And I'm finding that because of the messy, the deconstructing the parts that I, have said, here's who I am. And, to really allowing those parts of me that I haven't shown to be present for me, um, that's sacred. So, it speaks volumes to the trust that I have in you, you know? And I just, it's, in terms of my spiritual, connection as well, there is that scripture. I talk about it all the time. The steps of a righteous man are ordered by God. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, step one, ordered, ordered by God for me, and I am super grateful that I have done so much inner work that as I, step into these, you know, and into the steps with kind of that, first day mentality, you know, versus like, okay, and you help me really to see that because I'm like, okay, can we go to step four right away? I said, because, one, two, and three, I get it. And we can go a little bit into it. You guys, this is what I told her. And I said, but I kind of took a sneak peek at step four and all of the worksheets, and they're like, I'm like, oh, that's where it is. And you just so eloquently helped me to see, for myself, that's exactly what I do. It's, many times my MO. Get it? So I can at least get this temporary relief, that I'm on. This is it, versus, like having that mentality of beginner's mind, first day mentality. It's the times like where, first day my daughter is born. It's like, oh my God, look, she's so beautiful, perfect, and everybody, look, and first day, that like wonder, where now it's like, what is it you want? You keep calling me. So-
Right. Messy
right?
middle. Oh, yeah.
hmm
And all the messy middle. Yeah.
So, um, I'm expectant
Oh my God.
and I am like and I have said open it up, God, like really, and I'm gonna be patient, and I'm also going to, what really had caught me about what you have shared with me, so far, is the idea of this work being an avocation. And I thought about that. I'm like, oh my gosh, I've had a lot of those, and not the greatest places that have kept my attention. So looking at it as I do this is a part of who I am, what I do. I can see that when my mind typically is going to one of these vices, it happened this morning. Just as familiarity of what I was feeling inside. This is like, oh, this is bringing on something, And right away I said, what do we have? I know I bought something for Dad to eat. He really likes Entenmann's.
But and he hates to eat alone, so we got to
I
accommodate.
know, right?
Mhm.
And so all the tricks and all the subtle ways of continuing, you know, the unconscious way of being, really, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm I mean, it's hard to describe like the how I'm what's the word I want to say? Like what I know this work to be. And I think that's what I wanted to speak to you about is, the steps. Yes, they were about they address addiction, and the like, but more and more, it is the pathway to a spiritual awakening. So speak to that a little. Yeah.
I would love to speak to that because the main purpose of this book this is my
Oh, honey.
what is that? This is
Wow.
my 30-year-old copy of
Wow.
the Big Book of
Yeah.
Alcoholics Anonymous. Its main purpose is enable you to find a God you can trust.
Mm.
When I have helped people deconstruct from religion,
Mhm.
they have a punishing God, they have a judgmental God, they have a shaming God, and we take them from where they are into the God of their understanding, a God they can trust. Because if I don't trust my therapist, I'm not going to heal with my therapist. If you don't trust me, you're not going to share an honest inventory with me. And if you're not honest, you're not going to get well. Okay?
Mm.
So, so this whole purpose is spiritual. And there's a million things to say about it, but I was thinking, Joseph, as you were talking, if we could do one service to the people who see this today, and my purpose is to be a maximum service to God and the people around me always. So if I have one blip on your screen to make a difference in somebody's lives, then I want to say directly to them, if you tried 12-step meetings and it didn't work, it's not your fault. It wasn't your last stop on the ride. It wasn't your only hope, and you went to meetings, or you got a DUI, or you signed all the things for a year, or whatever the hell happened. It is that nobody ever, what's on the walls of the meeting rooms is not what's in the 103 pages of the Big Book, which is where the program of recovery is. And the first line on the first preface of the book says, we are 100 men and women who what? Have recovered.
Mm.
Past tense. You are not going to be as tied to meetings as you were to your drug of choice, unless all you're doing is switching addictions.
Mm. Right.
Because we do. We're looking to fix the pain, fix the I can't drink. What can I do? I can go to 90 meetings in 90 days. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And then they say take what you need and leave the rest. But in the first 103 pages, there are a lot of things. This is a recipe for recovery that if you leave something out and you don't know the difference maybe between smoked sauce and vanilla, they both look the same color in the bottle.
Mhm.
But if you put the wrong ingredient in or you take the wrong thing out, you're not going to get the same result.
Right.
So I just like to keep it really simple. And it's like every meeting room I've ever gone into, and it doesn't matter if it's NA, AA, OA, any A. And after a while, it doesn't matter what your drug of choice is, because when you get that it's an underlying spirituality, the rest is just symptoms. You can't
Mhm.
bullshit a bullshitter. The reason I can work with anybody in any addiction is because I get it. I identified it, and we have a solution on which we can absolutely agree. So there's 12 steps on the wall. Maybe there aren't. They might be revised steps even from the original. They might have taken the word God out because that was a little too strong for that particular group, so they did something different. If you just take the steps, and I said people like to do 1, 2, 3, 12 because the messy middle is 4 to 9.
There you go.
That's the work nobody wants to
That's
do.
funny. I want to go straight to 4.
That's right. Everybody, yeah. And see, and most people, that's why I said, you're all ready. And I'm tempted to jump with you, but we won't.
Yeah.
But,
No, no.
but Step one is admitted we were powerless and our lives have become unmanageable. Now, were powerless is past tense. You're not going to stay powerless, honey. That's the point of being recovered. You don't stay
Yeah.
powerless. But in the meeting rooms, you hear things that make you feel hopeless.
Right.
You know, you have to keep coming back. It works if you work it. And it's slogans, slogans, slogans. And for me, it's like the difference between what the Bible says, the red letter words, Jesus, and what you hear or see in church. They're not necessarily aligned. Same thing here. So, step one is admitted we were powerless and our lives have become unmanageable. Well, our ego just doesn't want any part of that anyway. So, if we can distract with stories or drunkalogs or relapses or whatever, then we will.
Well, especially in the spiritual community, it's like, oh, you're confessing you're an alcoholic or you're a this or you're an addict, right?
Uh-huh.
So I don't want to confess it and put it out into the universe. Is
Right.
it's kind of the most common, like, no, this isn't for me type thing.
Uh-huh.
So speak to that in the idea, because of course, you know, when I'm in my group, you know, I introduce myself and what I am, you know, here for and who I am, and it's not a big deal. But to others, it's kind of a,
Right.
I don't know, it's here, right? So share a little bit more about why that's done.
Well, I will because our ego or our culture or our real men don't or good Christians don't or whatever says that you don't submit or surrender. You
Hmm.
hold your selfhood. You
Yeah,
know, this is my protection, this is my shield, this is my power. And so so the first problem people have is admitting we were powerless.
there you go. Yeah,
There it is. Because they don't want to admit that they can't figure this out. And we just did Bill's story, you and I, and you see how many times, 5 times and 3 suicide thoughts
yeah.
before
Hmm.
surrender. Because you can't heal a thing until you feel the thing. And you
Hmm.
can't feel the thing until you face it.
Hmm.
And so the hardest thing, and that's why I say when people are like, well, I'm whatever they think they are, an alcoholic and addict, that is the hardest thing you're probably ever going to admit about yourself is that there is something in your life over which that is controlling you, that
Hmm.
has more power than you do, because if you could stop or moderate, you're not an addict or an alcoholic. But if you can't, it has you.
That exactly. And I think that was my epiphany was that I'm powerless over pornography, you know, and it's like there has been evidence of that.
Mhm.
And, you know, it's, um, and then because now that I just say it like it comes off my, you know,
Right.
there's no
You should.
power. It's like little Boo Boo and the lizard and the Monsters Inc. and she's beating that lizard at the end. I'm not scared of you, right? It's like pornography, whatever. Don't
Right.
let me get in your closet, people. We'll find one. Like hustle,
Uh-huh.
like
Yeah.
being a, you know, a good, you know, like just like you mentioned, you know, hiding in spirituality.
Yeah.
Like, you know,
So do
the
you want to
most,
unpack that a little bit?
please. Yeah, yeah,
You
yeah,
want
for
to do that
sure.
here? Okay. So,
Absolutely.
so let's unpack that because admitted we were powerless over pornography. Yes.
Okay. Hmm.
And not just that's cool. That's out of denial. And our lives had become unmanageable. How because of that had your life become unmanageable?
Ah, it it fed to the hiding,
Hmm.
which
Yeah.
whatever's done, you know, behind the scenes, of course, is where I don't share that type of thing.
Hmm. Shame.
The answer is there
Yeah. Yeah.
versus a scripture that I'm believing, but there's nothing internally that's happening. I haven't turned it inward. So I'm speaking to my religious experience, you know, with, you know, standing on the word,
Hmm.
right? And
Right.
so
Okay.
it was, okay, remind me. You could repeat the
So
question.
So the question was, so how did that addiction make your life
Gotcha.
unmanageable?
Okay, thank you, thank you,
What did
thank
it
you.
steal from you?
Oh gosh. It took away my peace
Mhm.
because I was always hiding. I mean, I was always hiding whatever it might be. I mean, early on was whether it be magazines or whatever, and then Lord have mercy with the electronics and the accessibility through the internet just magnified things. And um, it made me very dishonest, and so it cost me trust with some of the people that I love the most. It impacted my finances, because I'm spending money to keep this going. And then, Lord have mercy with OnlyFans, and that was even like, oh, I get to select who and, keep on. And then really thinking all along, this is just a phase. I can do this. It's not really that bad, and keeping the stories, you had, things that happen in your marriage and you're still dealing with trauma and you haven't been with anybody for quite some time, blah blah blah, and all the stories made it okay. But I think one of the things that you had shared with me is that addiction is just disconnection. I'm just disconnected, and so it helped to the shame, of course, as you can see, is waning, but the cost of it was my character, really, my health. Um, and I think just honesty, you know, um, I think those are the first things that come to mind, really the impact that it had. Did I answer your question?
You did, yeah. And
Yeah.
so if people, you and I have talked about what addiction is, it is impulsive, compulsive, and obsessive.
Hmm.
The main problem of the alcoholic centers in the mind rather than the body. Where your mind goes, your body follows. So first you start getting the thoughts about it, and then you start planning the hows and when I'm going to get my next fix and how to hide it and who's going to know and how much is it going to cost and where's that going to come from, and all the planning goes into place, all
Yeah.
that obsession. And then we create an opportunity that we can say, oh, it just happened. No, freaking didn't. There's a lot of planning.
No.
But the most of it, most of the planning goes into how to keep it secret. And
Yeah.
we as addicts live this double life, wanting to enjoy a certain reputation that in our hearts we know we don't deserve. And it is that shame-based part that drives you into relapse and into drink and then back into the drugs or switching addictions.
Yeah.
Because shame is a big driver. It's
Yeah.
a big one.
Oh
Okay.
my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we take step one, and maybe your power's life was unmanageable. Step two, came to believe. So you didn't have to believe, had to be willing to believe. But step
Hmm.
two is when you came to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore your sanity. See, everything has to be impact. First of all, I'm going to come to believe
Hmm.
that there's a power bigger than me. I am not the
Hmm.
be all and end all. If I could have solved this problem by now, I would have. I wouldn't be here. So,
Right.
okay,
Right there.
right?
Right
So,
there.
seasons of surrender, we're heading into a season of surrender, but we can't use the word yet because people react to that. And and okay, I came to believe the power greater himself could restore us to sanity means two things. First of all, you have to admit you're not sane, that your behaviors around this particular drug are crazy. Oh my God, my ego does not want to do that. I have a master's degree. I am smarter than that. Okay? Nope. That I'm crazy. But I was once not crazy because we're going to be restored to sanity. It's not like
Mm.
I've always been crazy. Somewhere along the way, I decided to medicate trauma or codependent pain or mask up to, show up and suit up, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And now I'm crazy because I either can't not start when I don't want to start, I start anyway, or I can't stop when I want to stop around these particular behaviors or substances. Okay.
Yeah.
And then step 3 is where you make a decision to turn your will and your life over to the care of God as you understand God. Okay.
Hmm.
Which means before you can get to the messy middle, we have to talk about the God word.
Yeah. Right.
And there are no
Mm.
two people on the planet, just like we don't ever have the same experiences, who have the same God concept. I don't care if you went to the same parochial school or you had the same parents who were both pastors or whatever. We are all unique. And the beauty of a spiritual soul connection is it meets you right where you are. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to stop smoking before you get help with your smoking addiction. You have to be willing to believe and take some baby steps. That's all it is. It's not too much. And the people that I work with the most are highly functioning addicts and alcoholics, or people who think that they've already tried and failed 12 steps. They've never even been introduced to 12 steps. That's what I call the trouble with 12 step. It's not the book. It's not the program. It's
Yeah.
what happens in community around that. Because anytime you go into a community of people and the sick outnumber the well, you can only become as healthy as they'll let you be without getting ousted out of the community.
Yeah. There's a stigma with those who go to 12 step. And so just like you mentioned, come on now, I have a master's and and to know that, the founders, and their stature, you know, it's humbling, and it's also an amazing example that, you know, um, addiction doesn't choose us, does it?
No, addiction
Yeah.
addiction is a defense mechanism,
Hmm.
like denial. There's not, denial gets a bad rap. You're in denial, like that's a bad thing. No, that is a life-saving, God-given healing mechanism when life throws something at me that is bigger than I can contain. That's what
Mm.
denial is. It holds it at arm's length until God has put into place everything I need so I can let it
Oh.
in for healing.
Oof.
All
We
it
need to
is.
package that bit right there. Well, because like, you hear me talk about the kingdom, in which, Jesus had spoken about that as within us. And, the more and more, I venture into looking through the lens of that kingdom, I see everything's inverted. You just inverted that, right?
Yeah.
Whether we call it reframing or what it might be,
Uh-huh.
and so there's that fear because why? It's messy. It's messy in 12 step work. It's messy in recovery.
It
I don't
is.
want to go dig. I already took care of that. I'm fine with it. She is who she is. I am who I am. He did what he did. I accept it. And
I
that
see that
narrative,
okay.
right? Yeah, I'm good. I'm fine. I don't need it. And then you see it like in the next sentence and like, oh, hello. And so I see this spiritual path. And
Yeah.
that's why I get giddy around, the step was ordered.
Yeah.
Like it
And
was
it
already a
moves.
recipe, right?
Yeah. Yes, waiting for you.
Hmm.
And it deconstructs when you get to your 4-step inventory, and I tell you and I just talked about this. It's not about looking at all the good things on the shelf too. That is an ego defense against seeing what's broken, seeing what's
Mm.
damaged goods. Our only reason to do an inventory is to look at what's no longer working so we can get rid of it promptly and without regret.
Wow.
So we can go on then to be restored.
I really appreciate that because my tendency, once I really started to, see myself in my ways, those
Mhm.
subconscious ways of surviving etc. Shame came, and now I'm so many times ultra, taking the searchlight. What does that mean? I don't want to live like that.
Right.
I don't
Right.
want to unpack every sentence I say or what somebody else says. I'm like, oh, they must be, yeah, yeah, yeah. So part of my healing is realizing that that's not my job. It never was. It never will be.
Well, and to
Right?
be a messy human means you are living mask free, which does not mean you don't,
Oh.
it doesn't mean that you don't know how to share with unsafe people to make sure that you are not overexposing, right?
Mm.
Unnecessarily vulnerable. But it does mean that you are in full control of what you share, with whom you share, and how you share it.
I'm
You're
writing
an
that
angel.
in my Kim isms, right? Messy human is is living mask free.
Yes.
Shit.
Yes. Yeah, and that's why I
Oh
love
my God.
you now. I've watched you for years in your iterations of YouTube stuff, and this is the first time I see Joseph regularly, consistently.
Yeah.
And I love that. I really love that because you are choosing to 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 leave the shame of being human, which awesome. Because that shame never comes from the inside out. It always gets put on us from the outside in. Guilt comes from the inside out. I do something and my soul feels guilty and responsible before my maker. That's guilt, and that's guilt we know how to process. But shame always comes from the outside. Shame is being seen before we're ready to be seen, being
Mm,
exposed against our will, whatever that is, without consent.
yeah.
And we carry that. And sometimes it's generational and sometimes it's from things that actually happen to us.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I know I've kind of adopted kind of a mainstay for me is that the unexposed is the unhealed.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
unless it's taken a look at, and for me, I know that each one of the steps in that, the first one, and I don't know if it equates to confession, but in each step I see some surrender and I see, bits and pieces of the spiritual journey. And I just wanted to let you know, I don't know if it's step 7 or 8 where we make amends with people. I've done that step already. So just to
so you
let
don't
you
have to do that when you
know,
get it. You're so full of it.
right? I
So
kind of read a little bit. I was like,
remember we talked about you don't know a thing until you do it.
yeah,
You know
just know
about it.
about it.
About it. You can read about it all for years and never do the step, and you think
Yes.
you know it well enough to teach other people, but you don't know a
Mm,
thing until you do it, because when you do it, it changes you,
absolutely.
irreversibly
Absolutely.
restores something.
That's what I call earned wisdom. There's
Yeah,
wisdom we glean, but when you experience it, it's
yeah,
like, oh,
yeah.
then it hits everything.
Hmm.
It's everything.
Right.
Um, what are you sensing in recovery work? Are there, recovery work is recovery work, I suppose, but are there themes or are you sensing that more people are giving themselves the permission to enter into recovery work? And are they doing it outside of 12 steps?
Yeah. And so there are a lot of paths to sobriety, whatever that looks like for you, or harms reduction, or whatever. But no, uh, what I have seen in 12-step recovery, okay,
Hmm.
because this is as volatile of a conversation as you're ever going to have in public about 12-step, because there are people who are 12-step is the only way, right way, my way.
Right.
And then there are people who don't want any part of it because it's too much God or this or that or whatever.
Yeah.
I lost my train of thought.
Um, we were ta-
The
it's tough when we're
question.
going, wait, what was it? Oh, this is the part where we'll ask Riverside, edit this part out.
That's right. Yeah, we
Okay,
can see
wait,
it.
what were we talking about? Um, it
No,
was a
oh, you were talking about the trajectory of recovery. What do I see
yes.
happening?
Yes. Thank
So I can tell you, because I've been on the planet long enough and I worked in healthcare long enough, that that what the original 12-step program did of Alcoholics Anonymous was a spiritual program of recovery that had real lasting effects. Okay.
Hmm.
And it was a very carefully constructed model that, as it became more popular and more global, the model got watered down, watered down, watered down. Now go back 20 years and enter the insurance companies and the treatment centers and the law and the judicial process,
Mm.
because that unholy trinity right there
Right.
has caused more misunderstanding, more
Oh, wow.
disinformation, and more relapse than
Hmm.
any other thing before or since. Because somebody who was 21 and doing episodic drinking got pulled over for a DUI now gets a year of, if you stay sober and go to counseling and go to 3 meetings a week and get it signed off, then we'll drop the charges and it won't be on your record. But in that year, while they're doing that, they're not alcoholic. They weren't alcoholic to begin with. They were a weekend binge drinker who got caught at 20 or 19 or whatever it was.
Right.
And by the time they've had to go to AA for a year, they've now been indoctrinated to a whole other kind of, oh, here's the word, cult.
No.
Because if you're not of us, you don't get it.
Right.
And, and if you leave, you don't know what happens to people who leave and
Right.
relapse. And so then they have that. But more than that, I often get hired not by the 21 or 25 or 28-year-old. I get hired by their parents
Mm.
who have spent bajillions of dollars sending them to 30-day treatment programs that last a month or 3 months or 6 months, and then they relapse. And now this young person at 28 has become the identified patient of a dysfunctional family, when all they were doing at 21 and drinking was medicating codependent pain from those crazy parents. Say,
Yeah.
okay. So it's,
Yeah.
I just like to, there's the systemic issues,
Hmm.
and then there's the interpersonal issues, which is codependent recovery, and then there's the spiritual inner man
Yeah.
issues,
Hmm.
right? Yeah. And a relapsing alcoholic is an untreated codependent. Take that to the bank. If you've got somebody who just can't stay sober, just can't stay abstinent, just can't stop whatever it is over and over and over, they are medicating some other kind of relational pain.
Mm.
The steps will get you there too.
That's important,
Mm-hmm.
you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And it doesn't cost $80,000 for 30 days. And you don't have to have it on your record, because the rest of that, as I've worked with highly functioning people who won't go to HR, people who won't go to their employer for employee assistance because they don't want it on their record. Military, law enforcement, you don't want this on your record if you can help it, that you have an addiction or a drinking problem. And so you don't have to. And neither do you have to go to a public meeting.
Yeah.
There are options, lots of ways.
Yeah. I you're not sharing too much about what happens in the meeting. It's just the
Mhm.
experience to see, for me at least, other men
Yeah.
across the country
Yes.
and many,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah.
who are addressing their spiritual malady.
Mhm. Yeah. And the best part about those meetings, particularly your first year of anything,
Mhm.
we feel so isolated and alone and ashamed. And we go into a meeting room with 10 or 20 or 30 other people, and we hear them telling their stories. And it's like, oh my God, I do that. I've done that. And they're not ashamed to talk about it. And it breaks the shame by breaking silence. That brings you out of denial. Essential.
Yeah.
It's essential. I
So,
can't go to church and talk about that stuff because that's the looking good club 101.
oh, oh my goodness, yes. Oh, and you can't be your most authentic self. No, where can you be? you know.
And that's why I felt like, because I was an educated woman, and scripturally educated as well, but the Bible always told me what to do, but it never told me how to do it.
Yeah.
And the church always told me what to do, but they never told me how to do it.
Hmm.
Suck it up.
Yeah.
This book, which is God's Direction for Handicapped Kids, gave me the how. And now I can live all of those beatitudes because I know how to
Mm,
do it.
that's good. I
I
like
can
that.
love my neighbor as myself because guess what? I'm not hiding anymore. I love all of me. Not
Yes.
in a egoistic, sensual way, in
Right.
a fully surrendered, fully accepted, fully human, fully divine mindset. Yeah,
However, yeah, that's
yeah.
so good.
Let's hope.
What are there things that you and I have talked about that you think would be appropriate for our conversation today? I'm trying to pull out some things that we've discovered as it relates to what I'm bringing forth around the permission to be in your mess, and that whole,
Right, to give yourself permission.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Anything come to
You
mind?
um you are an eager student. And and you have not been indoctrinated into 12-step meeting rooms.
Mm-mm.
So my work with you is going much quicker and more progressively because we don't have to deconstruct anything you already thought was your limiting belief of what's capable. When
Right.
people when the big book says you can be recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body, that's like you're cured, you're healed, you pick up your bed and walk again. All right?
Yeah.
All the things we know. But when you get to the meeting rooms and they say you're never really cured, you're never really recovered, you're always recovering, you're one drink away from a slip, you're all those things, and they put all
Hmm.
that on there. The reason why people don't think that there's a God who can solve your problem is because they don't think they'll do it for them. By the time you believe God will, he already has.
Hmm.
The problem is we don't think he will. And even when we see it in real life across the table from us, we think you're special and God will do it for you, but he would never do it for me. So I can't let myself hope or dream of real release from this thing. It's my cross to bear. One of the things you and I talked about was how people learning about instead of doing,
Hmm.
how people line up for the lecture on heaven, but nobody wants to go through the door to heaven. I want to learn all about it. I want to know what's ahead. I want to be able to control it. I want to pick the timing and the way and all. It's not the way life works.
Right.
It's not the way healing works. Messy middle.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to
So,
get comfortable. You have to get comfortable with discomfort. Any change, that's any change management. But this is first order change because we are going down to the toenails of your soul and
yeah.
cleaning the pipes all the way up.
What's interesting that just sparked a thought on kind of how I see people in their mess. It used to be is like, get your stuff together.
Well, maybe
you
you feel
know,
me.
right? Or I'd insert myself to be important enough for them to ask me for help.
Right.
I mean, it was an MO if I was feeling I needed to be liked or that type of thing. Um, I just lost my thought. Why is this happening?
Sometimes the MO of that is if you're crying or you're in a mess and I don't want to look at my mess, I want you to get yours under control so I don't have to feel anything about my mess. So all that codependent, I'm a helper, I'm a this, my gifting is, no, not necessarily. It can become its own primary addiction. I need to make sure everybody around me is okay because then that
Um,
reflects back to me that I'm okay.
that, that, yeah. It's the hiding. This whole anyhow. When I see someone in their mess, like I was mentioning, I mean, it turns from criticism and to compassion.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, they're in their breakdown. I hope, my prayer is that they find their, got to break down to break through,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and because we just don't wake up every day and say, you know what? I think I'll build a relationship with God. What do we say? you know, my
You
life
say
is
I'm going to die if I
amazing.
don't, so I guess I
All my,
better. Yeah.
all my crypto is in order. I look good. I have my cars, and let's just know. So the mess is what ushers us in to this amazing life that is for us if we choose. So,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
And the universe sends little signs that something's off, little intuitions, little gut checks, little things. And if you ignore those, then the board gets bigger, and pretty soon it's a baseball bat across the head to get your attention. And when the pain of where you are, whatever that
Mm,
is greater than fear of where you're going. So whatever it is you love
yeah.
more than God is what's
Mm.
going to be pried from your greedy little fingers.
Oof. Okay, mic drop, all the drops.
That's the bottom line.
It
Yeah.
is. It really
Yeah.
is.
And if you've learned to release and surrender and flow, and you're living in 10, 11, and 12, which is this daily conscious contact with God. God, what
Yeah.
would you have me do here? I don't pray for outcomes for people. I pray for the best, the best intention of, I don't know what the right answer is.
Yeah.
When you move in that space, there's very little that life can throw at you.
Yeah.
There isn't anything that life can throw at you that you can't resilience
Mhm.
is the bounce back, right? The bounce back. It's all right here, 103 pages, and it's this much.
Yeah.
This is the big
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
It's not,
Okay.
people make it harder than it has to be. And I work so many times with parents of adult children, and their adult children have been in and out since teenage or whatever. What did the parents do wrong? What did this do wrong? Y'all got a codependent mess over there. And we
Mhm.
can pull it apart and dissect it. If there's any primary addictions, we need to deal with that.
Mm.
But one addict will keep 20 codependents busy. And if that addict is a high functioning, high producing, high wage earner
Mm.
for a family of 10 good Catholic kids, then a lot of people are invested in them looking good even when they're not. And we'll hold them up and ply them up and hitting bottom. Fun fact, women will hit bottom and get help for their thing if they're going to lose their family. Men, that is rarely the motivator. If they're going to lose their career, now you have leverage that will
Interesting.
cause them to want to do the work. That can be a big enough point.
Yeah. Men are from Mars, women are from
Serious.
Venus.
That
Right.
makes a
Wow.
difference.
Well, Kim, thank you for coming on. I said let's just F around and see, what comes forward.
Yeah.
And it, I hope we can have more conversations. I wanted to really explore the opportunity in my service to others. It's like the reason why I'm sharing is in service to those who are also in their journey, whether it's their hero's journey, their spiritual journey, their journey to recovery, of
Mhm.
healing. And so I think there's a lot for me to continue to discover in our work together. And, I'd like to be able to highlight those things
Yeah,
if
you
you're
have
good with
my
that.
full permission. Yeah,
Okay. Yeah.
everything we do, you can do because we're recording a lot of what we're doing. One of the things we do when you and I are one on one with Zoom is that we're recording when I'm going through the book, and then when it gets personal, I'm turning off that recording while we do your deeper work, and then we're
Hmm.
coming back to it when we come back to the book.
Yeah.
One of the things you may at some point decide to do, and if you're going to evolve, if you're going to, um, I call it uncover, recover, and discover. You
Mm,
uncover what's blocking you from God. You recover your sanity and your voice, and you discover the Joseph that was meant to be all along.
mm,
That's the process. If during that process we come into something where you're going to do some real-time processing of anything, and you're willing to be seen, I think a great service to any of the audience who finds us a topic that interests them is to find out
wow.
how does it look and feel to go through a messy middle moment
Mm,
and find the aha on the other side, because we always get to the aha.
wow.
It could be powerful.
Ooh. You can see I'm feeling that.
Yes, I can. That's why we're not
Um,
running step 4 yet.
yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the, oh my goodness, I'm so open to that.
Yeah.
I mean, I am nothing and I am everything.
Yeah.
And with that, I give from a place of abundance, of truth, of love. There's so much to be captured and accepted and given. And I did a little reel the other day that, was like the most untapped resource on this planet is love.
Yeah.
And we possess it inside of us. And I likened it to that if it's untapped and I looked at synonyms, it's unused, undistributed, undiscovered. And so I'm like, oh shoot, all this love is here sitting in inventory. I want to go tap into that. And I think the more I'm tapping into it is because of the love and the acceptance that I have for this man that I'm looking at right now in the camera. I mean, and it's like, I think it's the acceptance. I suppose when you hear about it, agape love, no conditions, right? The highest form, the lowest form, the widest form, all encompassing, right? And I think that I feel that about myself. And it's like absolutely unequivocally, yes. So this love affair is like, what's the greatest act of love that I can do for this man? It's like, let's get a little rid of some of the baggage that keeps showing up, bro. And, like call in who do you want to accompany you? And here comes Kim. It's like she's here all the time. We've been working together for over a year now. I'm like, it's you. And it's like, so for me, it is that, mm, and sometimes I just don't have the words, so I tend to moan. But it's real. It's like almost wanting to explode. And yeah, the idea of transformation. I'm getting that taste of what that is,
Mhm.
and so I'm absolutely willing to do that. Look at what happened. I mean,
I do.
yeah, I'm willing to do that, and to um stand in the gap.
Mhm.
For those who might be afraid of the mess, because I never wanted to show the shadow, the darkness, the things that I so, like skillfully hid from. I want to share the architecture of how I hid so that I could be what you needed me to be, so that you'll keep me more in your life. I want to share that, because I've met myself, it's like, who would want to have you in their life? And so I become not selective, but I become in the frequency. It's like what I'm attracting now in my life are those who are like, let's get to the mess, you know, you know, not dancing around it or making stories around it. And I get there's a season for all of that. So thank you for allowing me to come in, not, yeah, I know it's kind of my channel, but thank you for saying yes to this journey. It's like, look what happened. Who would
Yeah.
have thunk, right? And I'm going to be doing it for all you all. Definitely medicine for me.
Yes.
And I had mentioned on another video cam that I just wanted to take the action just to see what unfolds, right?
Mhm.
And this is a medicine for me, and I'm a documentation for my daughters. And I said my children's children. I'm like, oh wait, I'm prophesying, grandkids. I'm like, I used to think when I was super super sick that I'm not going to be able to see my grandkids. And it's like, oh no, that is not the case. Yes, I will.
We
Yeah.
each have we have a divine purpose and we have an inherited purpose. It
Mm,
is the inherited purpose, the generational DNA stuff that we have to unpack and lay aside. The
mhm,
unexamined life is not worth living. So that that divine purpose, prophesying, whatever it is, can then flourish
mm.
unencumbered.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Mm.
And this is wonderful because if there's interest in this, they can just communicate with you about what do they want to know more about, and you'll be right there to say, well,
Well,
here's what it looks
actually, I
like when
mean,
you
and
have to feel
no,
something.
well, actually, I mean, I don't know if this is a resurrection of your work, but there's so many possibilities, and yeah, this is very unique, and I'm so for this because I know when I'm in your seat, I like getting in there. Let's take every stone, right? Uncover it. So let's do this,
Yes,
Kim.
yes,
All right. All
absolutely.
right. You
Thank
guys,
you,
for those
Todd.
of you guys who have been, listening in our conversation, thank you. This is a part of kind of the, um, lab that I'm doing here, experimenting, what works together. So for the 11 of you who watch, thank you. And Kim, once again, I love you. We'll be in
Thank you.
touch and we'll work it all out. Yeah, let's do this. All right. Bye, everybody. Thanks for joining. Take care.